everyone, Reaper here again with another video, collecting video. This time focusing in on variants. Now this is not going to be a very long video. I just have a few things to say about variant collecting and so forth. Some might be helpful to some, maybe to some it won't be. But just wanted to talk a little bit about it because I know there are a lot of collectors out there that really enjoy collecting variants, variant covers, and all that stuff. My opinion on that is that if that's something that you like to do, like if you consider yourself a variant collector, then I don't see that there's anything really wrong with that. There's ton of different collectors out there. Some mainly go for first appearances, some go for number ones, some try to finish runs, short runs, complete runs, whatever you have it. And variant collectors are part of that family, especially within the last, let's say, about 10 years, or maybe even shorter than that, where variants really started to become, a big thing in comic book collecting. So I don't really collect variants that much. That doesn't mean that I don't have some in my collection, but I typically don't really consider myself a variant collector. Now, when it comes to variants, just check my notes here. I think in the long run, collecting variants may not necessarily, if you're looking, first off, if you're just a variant collector, and you're looking because you really pride yourself, you pride your collection on the different types of variants you have, whether they're just variants or rare variants, then that's cool. But I think if you're looking down the line, 10 years from now, maybe shorter time, maybe a little longer time, that these variant books are really going to have some sort of value, I think for the most part they're not. Of course, there are exceptions to the rule. Every time I bring this up to somebody always has to say something about, well, what about that Captain Marvel 17? Well, yeah, of course that's going to have value because it's very rare. And there are many others like that Captain Marvel that are very rare that were produced in limited quantities. So anything I think that is produced in limited quantities, has the potential to have a financial benefit to you, right? But I think that there are a lot out there that are just, not worth it. That's just the way I feel about it. But like I said, this, it may sound controversial, to people that consider themselves strictly variant covers. This is what they pride their collection on. Well, if you pride your collection on the variants that you have, then that's fine. Why would you be offended by maybe the variants may not be worth a whole lot? Look at it this way. Some of us out there, are just first appearance collectors. Not every first appearance we buy is worth something or will be worth something in the future. Some may be going for a high price now. In 10 years from now, you find those in maybe $5 bins or on bargain bins or whatever. I've told you, if you watched my last video, my year in collecting, second year, 1994, I think I brought up in that video Spawn #1. When I first started collecting back in 93, 94, that was a $20 book. Then up until a couple of years ago, that book was in dollar bins or maybe $5 bins if it was pricey. So what was back then may not be right now, may not be the same for right now, just as that applies to everything. First appearances, how many of us have collected runs, entire runs of collections? Well, I would be willing to bet a majority of those books that we have, if they're 300 issues, 400 issues, or hell, even 30 issues, I'm willing to bet a majority of them are junk. Now, we may not consider them junk because they're part of our collection and we like them, and that's fine. But if you're looking at it from a financial viewpoint, no, you probably, sometimes these things that you collect, whether they're first appearances or variants that are hot, if you're looking at it from a financial point of view, you just got to know when is the right time to flip it, to sell it. I'm not really good with that stuff, but there are people out there that are good with it. So, that's when I think it could be of value for people that are looking at it from a value standpoint, a financial standpoint. So that's what I think about variance, but it also goes for everything else, right? I mean, remember, going on, what I like to collect a lot of first appearances, but remember when I brought this up before? Remember Ultron? Remember when he was named in the new Avengers movie? His name was in the title. That book was going for crazy money. That book was never valuable. Never valuable. It might have been worth about, a certain amount of money, of course. In high grade, of course. But the prices that thing was going for in low grade and mid grade and high grade was outrageous. When I first started collecting comics back in '93, that book was practically worthless. And so many other books, too. But when the movie came out, it shot right up, and after the movie was done, it was over with, the book fell like a falling star. And it still boggles my mind that some people will pay a high price for that book. But it goes for all things, so it's not just variants, okay? So don't think that people out there that if you're really into variants, you feel that you need to stop collecting. That's just ridiculous. I don't think that. But I'm just trying to look at it for those that might be looking at it from a financial viewpoint. Now, see, the reason why maybe I'm not so involved in variants is because that's not the era in which I was brought up in. I think a lot of your background, where you came up from, really influences you. Really influences your worldview, and when it comes to comics, how you collect. There are people that have been collecting comics since the 60s and 70s that may not buy books after 1980 for whatever reason. That's just the way they are. Me, I was brought up in the 90s. I saw how things were really, the bubble was getting bigger and bigger, and I saw it pop, and I saw how devastating it was. But that's why I decided long ago that I was just going to stick with books that I think any collector would probably have an interest in, not some sort of niche collector. Not saying that variants are necessarily for a niche collector, but I think it tends to move or gravitate toward that spot. So like I say, the good about collecting some of these variants, I mean, those that collect variants would, you obviously know. If you're looking to flip them for, a decent price when the book is hot for whatever reason, then it could be really good. You could use that to get other books or other things, right? Or other variants. I think the bad, though, even for a book like Captain Marvel 17, the second print, the Kamala Khan on it, the blue border on the bottom, you know what I'm talking about. Even though that's going to hold a certain amount of value because it's a limited amount of books, and a lot of people would like that book. I think that book, for the most part, there's exceptions to everything, right? But I think for the most part, that book, people are attracted to it who are diehard variant collectors. Like for a collector like me, or sometime older collectors, yeah, we understand the value of that book. But I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to spend a couple $100 on it. Even though it may be limited and may have potential to grow, I'm not going to do that. I couldn't care less if that book goes up in value and I missed an opportunity, because it's just not something that I'm into. And I think books like that are very rare, that are going to cost you a couple $100, and some books might even a couple thousand, depending on what it is. Was it that Batman 608, that special rare book that could go for thousands? I think unless you find that, if you could get that for a deal, any of those books, then if I could get those for a deal, then I might get it and then try to flip it. But other than that, if I can't really find a deal that I would be willing to accept, and I think it goes for a lot of collectors, we'd probably just pass on them, because that's not necessarily my thing, collecting those really, really rare variants. Although I have a couple, but nothing to write home about. But that's just the way I feel about the subject. When the Batman Rebirth came out, well over a year ago, and they've always had the two covers. I guess one's a variant cover and one's the regular cover. I was buying both because, I collected Batman. But after a while, I started saying to myself, do I really need both covers? I would look at both and I would decide which cover I liked the best, whether it was the variant cover or the regular cover. Whatever one I liked the best, I picked up. And I know there were some what was it? The Detective Comics one that came out a few months ago. I wish I remember the number. I didn't write it down. But the one that was a white background and had, I think, Batwoman on it. A lot of people were looking for that one for a while, and it was, fetching more than cover price. That's just the one I happened to pick out of the two because I like the cover. Well, variants are cool, I guess, in that sense if you're looking to buy them because of the cover. But on the whole, I mean, if you're looking at it comes to value, I don't really know. I don't really think that a whole lot of them are going to retain their value unless they're those really, really special ones, like the ones I mentioned. And I think they really mainly appeal to variant collectors more so. Not saying that they don't appeal to all different types of comic book collectors. That's not necessarily the case. But I really think that those special, really, really expensive ones appeal to more of a minority in the comic book collecting community rather than the whole. But that's just how I feel on the subject. But if I were to see a variant cover out there or a variant book that I could get for a good price, sure, why not? It's a no-brainer, right? Why wouldn't you want to get it? It's a cool cover. It's a limited amount, depending on what the book is. If it's a limited amount of copies, why not? Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with building your collection on variants or having variants in your collection and being a variant collector. Not saying anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I can't speak for everybody. But those are just my viewpoints on variants. I don't know if this video was necessarily helpful for a lot of people who are interested in collecting variants, who are collecting variants, or even care. That's fine. But that's just my viewpoint on the subject because I know it's a pretty big thing. A lot of people like to show their variant covers, and I like looking at them. I think they're cool. But it's just not something that I'm gravitated to. I'd rather get something else if it costs a lot of money, right? If it's something that's cheap that you could pick up for a couple of bucks, sure, why not? But if it's something that's going to cost me several $100s, like that Captain Marvel 17, I think it's Captain Marvel 17, right? I've been saying that the whole video. If it's something that's going to cost me $300, $400, $500, $600, I'm like, unless I could sell it for about $1,000 or $2,000, and that's immediately, that's a different story. So that's just the way I feel about it. So thank you for watching this video. I know it was rather short, but I hope you enjoyed it. This is actually one of 2 videos I'm going to be making today. I'm going to be filming Reaper's Picks Volume 2. So stay tuned.